Hello, my name is John Didi, professor of political science at the community colleges of Baltimore County in the state of Maryland. Welcome to the Maryland State Government and Politics podcast on Substack. Today, I am honored to welcome to the show professor of political science at Anne Arundel Community College, Dan Nataf. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you on.
Thanks for having me on, John.
First question I have today is how did you get interested and started in polling?
hmm Well, I originally was hired on at Anne Arundel Community College to do two things. One was to be a political science professor. The other was to run the Center for the Study of Local Issues. That was way back in 1995, and one of the signature products of the center has always been doing a public community poll of Anne Arundel County residents. We do that in the fall and the spring. Our lives are dictated by semesters. And over the years, we evolved the way in which we did it, particularly during COVID. We really changed because the students had been the interviewers. We had a kind of call center model at the college. That could no longer take place, so I moved everything online, and that's basically where it's remained ever since. So since basically spring of 2020, we just have to use various databases and access to people in whatever way we can so that they can be aware that there is a survey being conducted. If you like, I can tell you some of the data sources and how I go about it, but
Yeah, go ahead. The more
okay.
information, the better. I'm here to learn too.
Okay, great. Well, so during the call center period, I had asked people at the termination of the phone calls if they could give me their email address so that I could ask them to participate in the future just by online through email solicitations. And so that was one pretty big bundle of a database, if you will. About 2,500 people put themselves on there. But as I say, I sort of terminated that at the beginning of COVID. So that group has not increased. So what I've done is I've gone to purchase email addresses. These, believe it or not, are available from vendors. And for however you're willing to spend, you can get thousands and thousands of email addresses that have been geocoded to the county. And you can have them weighted by different qualities like race or a location within the county. So that's pretty helpful. And then we reach out through two partners. One is the public libraries. Um, they have been willing to send out a mass email to their many thousands of patrons, and I get a fair number of completions from them. And then I also have another partner, which is Ion Annapolis, is a website with again several thousand um, members, and it goes out to them as a request to participate. And then finally, I do use my own students. And we last time, they say this spring, um, I have I open up the survey longer for students because they get extra credit, and if they can't quite get it together by the
Oh
time we
yeah.
have to do the analysis, I go, well, okay. So I'm about at 570 students. And what we've done over the last few years is evolve a section of the survey which is only asked to students. That is to say, there is a qualifying question that says, are you currently taking classes at AACC? If you say yes, then you get put into a cluster of questions that have to do with something about the college, your college experience, your views about teaching and learning, about the support services, and so forth. And so we can then find out things that otherwise aren't really polled very often we have a group called PRIA, Planning Research and Institutional Assessment. and they do occasional polls. Usually they're nationally normed polls and so forth. And so they do them every once in a while, but we do this every semester, so we are able to kind of ask questions that are pressing at the time from the point of view of faculty in the college overall. We've been focusing a lot on AI lately and trying to understand to what extent students are amenable or perceive the issue of AI as impacting their professional ambitions, and in turn, how we are meant to adjust our teaching models so that we can have AI as an element so that they are more employable once they leave the college. So anyway, we've spent a fair amount of time on that, but as that's a separate section. And so once I collect all this information, uh, the the data set is weighted, and I try to hit some population targets that I get from census, and also the Board of Elections for party registration. And so once I am done with that, I have a smoother balance between men and women, Democrats and Republicans, highly educated, not so educated, blacks and whites, and so forth. Because otherwise, it just doesn't happen organically. We just never be able to get the proportions, or it would take, very, very long to try to collect that just organically. So I think a lot of pollsters these days who themselves rely more and more on online appeals or groups, some of them presumably purely probabilistic groups, some less non-probability. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. And then they kind of dream away all their problems by waiting and then praying that the weighted sample accurately represents the population to which they're generalizing. So that's what we do these days. And I will say that by doing the survey online, you're able to make the survey longer and have a lot more open-ended questions. And so when I write this up, the press release is sort of a report. The last one was over 700 pages long. It included about 500 pages of open-ended comments that I placed in appendices so that anybody who wants to read what people said to a specific question, they can do that, and it's there verbatim. I have been using AI a lot to try to categorize that information in the report itself. I have a lot of sort of tables that show estimated percentages that AI has attributed to categories that it forms taken from the open-ended questions. So I find that the closed-ended questions, the open-ended questions blended together provide a pretty accurate overall view of what the public sentiments are at any given time.
Yeah. One of the things that I've seen how polling has changed and how it's done is at one time it was like landlines. That's all who got polled.
Hmm.
Then with the development of cell phones by the mid 90s, at times those people didn't get captured. Then they figured out how to get them captured. A lot of polling companies that I'm not a big fan of, I'm not going to name names, but basically situation where it's like press one, press two, and you really don't get a sense of the person in any form or another.
Yeah, those
How do
polls
you,
have to be really short too.
yeah.
And people aren't going to go press one and two for more than 5 minutes.
And the other thing I've noticed about polling when it comes to the phone, especially where I live, is if the number is a 202 area code, I know it's from DC, and sometimes I'll tell my wife says, "Oh, it's spam," and I'll say, "Wait, that's a poll. I want to have some fun." Because
Mm,
sometimes the RNC used to call me a lot, so I'd have fun with their polling too.
gosh, you sound like you might have been a belligerent poll person being polled, um, causing trouble rather than trying to honestly provide your true opinions.
Well, for them, I wanted to have some fun.
I got you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
make it entertaining.
the problem with polling is that some groups don't like being polled. I mean, they just don't. If you try to poll uh, low-income people, some minorities, young people, low educated people, they just don't like to be polled. And so to try to then to say, I'm going to generalize, this is what young people did in the last election. Well, I hope you were able to poll them and get something that looks like a true sample of people between 18 and 29. Because I mean, my students really help that group. It bolsters it up, sure, but they're a captured, audience. If you're just doing a random poll in your Gallup or somebody, it is hard to get these shy people, even Trump voters.
Oh,
The
yeah.
shy Trump voter. That was forever a reason why polling would underestimate his performance in elections, because people who are Trump supporters, they're just not attracted to having a conversation with a pollster. And so there's always going to be a degree of inaccuracy to polls. Oftentimes, you see groups like RealClearPolitics.com aggregate, right? They're taking a whole bunch of different polls and showing you the average among the polls, hoping that by some magical law of averages, whatever that number is more accurate than the number generated by any single poll. And so, with Anne Arundel County, I'm kind of the only game in town, and I try to weight the sample so that it has consistency, and I think it shows consistency. I've been doing this for a long time, and I can see the numbers over time. A lot of them are very stable; they don't change much, and it gives me confidence that I'm polling something real, that the dimensions are real, whether they are exactly like they are represented in society. It's harder to say, but that there's a constancy within the poll. I think that is something that's true.
Recently, you did a poll, and basically, I want you to discuss a little bit of it, but basically, it came
Mhm.
down to what people are feeling the most as far as issues. The economy, inflation, growth, taxes are really the top concerns. Uh, did those results surprise you? And do you think that if other counties that were similar polling done, do you think they would find the similar results, or do you think it would be a little different?
I think that the Anne Arundel County is a suburban county, and the people who are here essentially they're not looking to replicate Baltimore City. Baltimore City is highly dense. It has a lot of public transportation, and there's not many places to park your car. It is a mode of life. The suburban mode of life is much more predicated on having an individual vehicle that is the mode of propulsion from place to place. And what that does is create a tension between affordability goals and I call it quality of life goals, in the sense that while everybody says that housing is an issue, is a concern, um, the people who have housing are more concerned about the impact of trying to solve the affordability crisis through added density than they are in solving the problem itself. It's a problem that doesn't affect them, and so or it tangentially affects them. For younger people, first-time home buyers, people who want to leave home, students who want to rent their first place, affordability and the supply of housing is a critical thing. For people who have bought housing and maybe they bought it prior to the rise in interest rates, they are a real status quo group. They have kind of a house, lock. They don't want to get rid of their mortgage. It's at 2.5%. Their payments are low. They are pretty happy with the way things are. So the question that you asked is this generalizable? Is the unit into which you're polling similar, have the same kind of dynamics that I just described? Howard County probably does. A lot of Baltimore County does. Um, maybe significant parts of Prince George's probably does do as well. Parts have. But as you get into rural counties, you're not going to find the same dynamic, and probably it would be different in Baltimore City for the reasons I said. So that's why I say it would be nice if there were more county level polling. Uh, and I saw that the Institute for Politics at UMBC has did a poll of Baltimore County recently. That's the first one I've seen. I think they must be branching out. Um, but if when I in summer after semester is over, I'm going to spend some time and look over their results and see how comparable it was to our results, and see whether or not there's a lot of overlap between Baltimore County and Anne Arundel County.
One of the things I looked at your poll and I was kind of fascinated by was a variety of questions you asked regarding effectiveness of citizen representation. Also, a lot of questions regarding the current county executive, Stuart Pittman, and what they want to see in the next county executive as
Mhm.
far as that type of transition. Because lately we see in national politics, people almost want to vote for the opposite. In other
Mhm.
words, we had this, now we want something totally different.
Mhm.
I want you to talk a little bit about what are people looking into is or want out of the next Anne Arundel County executive? Do they want Stuart Pittman 2.0 or do they want just something totally different?
The challenge of being an incumbent these days is if something isn't going well, whether you're the cause of it or not, you're likely to be blamed for it. And so um, the dynamic, I think, in Anne Arundel County, particularly last few cycles, has been to have a lot of expressive voting along partisan tribalistic lines. And so the challenge for Pittman is that he's the incumbent, but on the other hand, he's also the Democrat who represents resistance to the Trump White House and all the initiatives coming from there. So the question then becomes, what are the voters looking for? Are they looking for another person um, who they can support? And this would be, again, mostly divided along party lines. Democrats will say, well, we have to support whomever the person getting through the primaries. We have contested primaries that we haven't had in virtually forever. And the Democratic
Contested
side,
Democratic primaries, which is a
yes.
rarity. Usually it's like, can we find anybody to run?
Yeah, that is so true. Just nobody wants to put their hand up. I mean, Stewart, who had ever heard of Stuart Pittman in 2018? And absolutely no one, only the people with horses and stuff. But I had never heard of him. So he was brought out of hiding in a sense and volunteered to place himself against Steve Shue, who, you think, okay, Steve Shue is going to be a formidable candidate. And he was, but he lost, right? So to what do you attribute his loss? Well, I think it's pretty clear that this is part of a resistance mobilization by Democrats, and they just turned up because they have been winning every county-wide. In 22, they won every single county-wide seat in Anne Arundel County, every single one of them. This was unprecedented, right? Unprecedented. And so, what do we attribute that other than a mindset of we're sending a message to Trump, and the only way we know how to do that is by voting for the Democrat at the local level and really up and down the line. So this then becomes a question. Okay, that's fine. You're voting resistance. I get you. But what is, other than that, what does the public want you to do? Right? It's one thing to say you're going to be the symbol of resistance, and maybe on 287G agreements and a few things like that, you can kind of see it percolating down. But on the question of the underlying questions that are true to local government, between a desire for people to maintain their qualities of life, not to have additional traffic, not to have overcrowded schools, to have effective policing, to have parks and recs, provide amenities. I mean, these are all standard stuff, right? And so if somebody is voting for you because of Trump, it isn't giving you any kind of message as to what they would like you to do at the local level. And so, I try to backfill that by showing nuances in polling results. For example, people want lower taxes. I asked, should we keep taxes the same as they are, increase taxes or lower taxes? 53% said lower taxes. Great. And then I asked, well, look at these different elements of the county government. Including fire, police, schools, teachers. How do you think that they are overstaffed, understaffed, or just about right? Understaffing was the result for every category except one, which was a kind of amorphous administrative staff, which you can think of, kind of bureaucrats, right? You
Yeah.
don't know what they do. But everybody else, fire, police, teachers, dramatically understaffed. So fine, now you want us for sure to lower your taxes, but you admit that county departments and agencies are understaffed. What do I do about that? I mean, what is the mandate? Somehow efficiency, right? Get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse becomes the mandate. But that's a lot easier said than done, right? You talked to others about an office of inspector general who would try to get at where that waste, fraud, and abuse lies. Um, I hope that there's enough there that it makes a difference in terms of teacher hiring and staffing or police or fire staffing. But, oftentimes people understand that it takes staff to get things done in certain types of services. But they just, they see it as an affordability issue for themselves, right? They say, I don't have enough money to pay these taxes, but I sure wish there were more fire, police, and teachers around because I know they do some good. This becomes the charge for the incoming county executive. How do I balance these two imperatives? No higher taxes, but better services. And staffing is, I mean, that's probably just a way of saying I wish things were better in those areas, whether it's by efficiencies or by actually hiring staff. I don't know that people can make those differences out. But whoever it is that becomes the nominee on either side, and here I'm sure that Dave Crawford, who is the Republican unopposed candidate, will say and will fixate on the people want lower taxes side of that equation. It's made for him, right? It's 50, a majority want lower taxes. So if I stop there and I say the affordability crisis will be solved by lower taxes, vote for me, I will lower your taxes. Okay, that's half the equation. But what are you going to do about all that understaffing? We looked at, just as an example, another question about the expansion of park and recs. Most people wanted the expansion. They favored the expansion. They wanted, for example, far more trails. They wanted land preservation. All that costs money. Right? It's a quality of life problem, right? It costs money. And so, all right, you want lower taxes, but you seem to want things that money can buy. How's that going to work? I'm not so sure. Um, I did see, I mean, there'd be clearly partisan differences. People who are conservatives will always prioritize lower taxes above amenities. And their solution is to not kind of dilute what I've got, so don't allow more of those others in. The poor people who might, ruin my quality of life because we have to create workforce housing. Oh, that's horrific. The ones who want to press for expensive stuff like public transportation. Another horrific thought. It allows people to kind of get around, and maybe there's a bus stop in my neighborhood or close to it. Uh-oh. And so you get these kind of strange dynamics where just on a partisan grounds, the anti-development side becomes sort of a conservative position, more amenable to Republican appeal than the Democratic appeal.
Well, if you like trails, definitely College Parkway under the Pittman administration. It's amazing how they got it done, not because of bureaucracy, but you wondered when they got started, how are they ever going to complete this? And you look at it saying they did a hell of a job. The
Hmm.
one interesting thing is I didn't vote for Pittman. I voted for Steve Shue the first time.
Uh-huh.
And I had a friend of mine tell me a story that Shue had a lot of campaign cash. A
Hmm.
guy from the Baltimore Sun had called me the day of the election in 2018 saying, "Look, we see Shue as a possible future governor, and
Hmm.
can we do an interview with you afterwards?" And the focus of the piece was going to be Shue and Alan Kittleman
Hmm.
because they were the favorites in their races with Calvin Ball and Pittman.
Hmm.
And that night, the results came in. It was like the vote blew no matter who. And I was surprised Shue never got back in the game. Kittleman tried, and Howard County's just changed too much.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Kittleman family name was good for a while, didn't quite work out there as
Hmm.
far as for
Hmm.
him when he tried to regain the throne on that. One question I want to ask about kind of before we end, because I think it's a really interesting issue in Anne Arundel County, and that is we have an upcoming primary. And right now you got three candidates who are really close.
Hmm.
I've gotten some of the mailings from Allison Pickard.
Hmm.
Pete Smith hasn't come to my mailbox yet, and neither has James Kitchen. And the results are all kind of close as far as everybody in general. I think in local government, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but name identification is a hell of a battle because everyone in, Pete Smith's district knows who he is. Outside of that, he's just a rumor.
Yeah.
And uh, Picard has gotten a lot of attention aligning herself with Sarah Elfrith.
Hmm.
And James Kitchen is basically saying, hey, I've been working hand in hand with Stuart Pittman. Where do you think this race is going to go in the end as far as the primary?
It is a challenge for exactly the reasons that you've outlined. I held a candidate forum last Monday. The four of them were there, right? Kyle Nemhart was there as well. In the poll we did, he was at 2%. And so he's kind of, taking up space without the prospect for successful election. So when you then say to yourself, all right, what is the natural constituency of each of these people? I think it's discernible. With Pete Smith, my take is that he expects overwhelming support from the Black community. And, he's thinking, I need some 20-ish thousand votes in the primary. That's all I need. And if I can get a really strong turnout from Black people, voters, right? That might be enough. Throw in a few, I don't know, bleeding heart liberals who are white or maybe Hispanic or whatever. And because, I mean, Pete Smith has a very endearing personal story about it coming up from an impossibly difficult childhood with five kids. His mother had them all between 14 and 19, moved to, I don't know, countless different schools and housing. If anybody shouldn't have made it, Pete Smith is that person. But he found direction in the military, and he's been able to continue on and show success ever since. So that is an endearing story that I don't know many people have heard. And so his problem, I think, is that he may not have enough money to pull it off, to do a kind of an outreach, by a vigorous campaign. He's come to countless candidate forums. Like I say, he was at ours, and I've seen him at a few others. He's always there. Um, whether or not it's, I mean, we had very few black people at our AACC centered event. Now with Pickard, she is hoping that the coalition that brought Elford into power is going to be there for her, right? Because she suffers from the lack of name recognition, in probably central and certainly South County. And she's hoping that an endorsement by Sarah Elford, that she picks up some of that South, sort of Annapolis-centered audience, because Sarah obviously was the state senator from District 30, which is Annapolis and parts of South County. So,
I'll tell a quick little story.
okay,
I got two mailings yesterday from Pickard that were paid for by Sarah. And of course, they had Sarah on it. So I did, so it always helps to have a friend like that kind of come out for you and be willing to spend a little bit of money.
here it
Oh,
is.
yes, that's the one
I
I
can't,
got.
it's not in, yeah, but that's it. You can't see it because it's not focusing well,
Yeah.
but that was it. And so like I say, she's just hoping that uh, endorsement brings the same coalition. There are a lot of women voters in the Democratic side, and to try to focus on that as the branch that you open up within the coalition, within the Democratic electorate, that sounds like it's plausible, right? It breaks her out of just North County and the parochialism of that area. She was also on the school board, but she did not get the TAC endorsement. Kitchen did, right? So Kitchen has I mean, so let's count Kitchen's endorsements. One is Stuart Pittman. Two is Gavin Buckley. Three is Lisa Rodvian, right? And this is kind of okay. Pittman is a guy who lives in South County. Kitchen ran for South County years ago for county council. Lisa Rodvian is the District 6 outgoing county council person. Gavin Buckley is the mayor of was the mayor of Annapolis. All right, so that's going to create a certain challenge for Smith and Elford to try to overcome, because sort of south of the Severn seems pretty, well defended, if you will, by Kitchen. Um, and I wonder what Severna Park is going to do in Arnold. How are they going to go? Don Guile, I think, is also part of the women group that
Oh, yeah.
endorsed Allison, and so she might have some sway there. It would, I mean, a kitchen needs some endorsements from somebody in North County. I mean, some people who are recognized and admired there, just to show that he could break out from sort of south of the Severn. And I think Pete Smith needs to show endorsements of someone people know who's not just in the black community. And so every one of these candidates are niched in some way. Um, and that's what makes it close. It's regionally complicated, it's racially complicated, it's gender complicated,
Yes.
right? And it's endorsement complicated. So I wouldn't want to be the one to go on the betting markets and say I'm putting my money on A, B, or C, because variabilities in turnout, and the effectiveness of last minute campaigning when people are really starting to focus. You just can't tell how in a close election, just small variations of turnout could shape the outcome. Just need to win by one, right? And so
Sure.
it's if it's close and you turn out, I mean, having the teachers union support for Kitchen seems to me a very important endorsement. It reminds me of when Janet Owens was running for the Democratic primary back in '98, and Diane Evans was her opponent. Janet got the TAC endorsement, and that's what carried her through to win the primary back then. And so, it's formidable. My crazy poll that really didn't try to be too scientific on this one issue had the whole gap of 8 points between P. Smith sort of at the bottom, Kitchen at the top, but it's only an 8 point difference. So anything could happen. Nothing would surprise me in the end.
Well, I want to thank you again for your time. I appreciate the education you've given me today and the viewers also. Take care and enjoy your summer vacation.
Thank you, John. You as well.